Dr. Mona joining me now, and everything you do is so in line with what I believe in as a mom. And I really emphasize health. So I want to get into this notion with you because I know you talk a lot about this in reframing how we parent. It's
hmm
easy to feel like a failure as a parent almost every day, but let's get right into that.
Well, we first have to kind of realize where we think this may be coming from. And I think our generation, a lot of the women and dads too, a lot of women have been raised with this perfectionist attitude. We're high achieving women in our generation. Maybe we've gotten careers in medicine or we've gone through graduate school, whatever it is. We have this expectation that I work hard and I will get this outcome. But
Mhm.
parenting doesn't quite work that way. And I think you start to realize that when you become a mother or father, that you know what, I can't actually work hard always to get the outcome I expect, whether it's for myself, whether it's for my child. And that difficulty in understanding that your expectations may not meet reality all the
Yeah.
times can be really hard as a new parent, especially. And then also when you have multiple children, because what you do with one child may not always work with
Mm.
another child because every human being has a unique temperament. So, although the parenting philosophies may be there, sometimes you may be telling yourself when you have a second kid, why is my kid not sleeping well? Why is my kid having more tantrums? I did this all amazingly with my first. And now, why is my second one going through so many issues? Is it me? Is it them? And I really like to reframe and remind parents that it's not anyone's fault or anyone's wrongdoing. It's really just understanding that we are all human beings on this world with different temperaments. We may need things approached differently, and that includes our children.
Well, I couldn't agree more from my first child coming out screaming to my second one, like never crying. And
Yeah.
then the third one was like right in the middle. I thought I had it
Yes.
figured out. So let's talk about some of the most common things. So you're a mom, you're a doctor, you go through all these things we do at a higher level of stress, I would say,
hmm hmm
being a doctor. What are some of the ways that you manage that? How do you balance that? It's one of the top questions I get from parents is trying to balance all of that.
So I think one of the biggest things is when you're feeling like your expectations are not meeting reality, or when you're feeling like a decision I made is not the choice I wanted. I really remind parents to look at the big picture of parenting. And that's what I mean by reframing, right? So, looking at the big picture, I'm going to use an example of a mother who decides that they want to breastfeed their baby, but ends up having to use formula. With many women, the way we have been taught is that if you don't breastfeed, it's a failure to formula feed your baby. This is what science and parenting and education has told us. But when you actually look at the data and you actually look at a grand scheme of a child, their development and their nutrition and their well-being is more than just one thing that we do as a parent, right? Of course breastfeeding has benefits, there's no denying that. But when your child, they talk about higher IQ, they talk about lack of obesity, they talk about so many different things. Look at the lifestyle you're also giving your child. If you end up formula feeding, are you providing them with nutritious foods? Are you giving them an enriching environment of
Mhm.
engaging with them developmentally? These are all things that also have positive outcomes. So it's really remembering that if something is not going your way or something wasn't going as planned, you are looking at, okay, is this really going to matter in 5 years from now? Or is it just something that
Mm.
I'm feeling very heavy about right now? So the saying goes that if it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes thinking about it, right? Meaning when you look at something that's happening, you have to say, well, I hear about a lot of formula fed babies that turn out amazing. I hear about a lot of babies who have X, Y, and Z with positive outcomes. When you are a parent and you're going through an experience, it can feel so isolating and so hard when things don't go your way. And I always remind my parents to also lean on the people who support you and uplift you in a way you need that uplifting. So whether that's someone who's going to tell you how it is, if that's your way of speaking, whether it's going to be that person who just listens and just listens until you need advice, you really need to have that with you to kind of get through those hard times and help you with the reframing. That's so important in motherhood.
So much of what you're saying goes back to me to mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you end up dealing with both. You're a pediatrician. So, of course, you're working with the kids, but inadvertently, you're working with these parents. And what I'm hearing also in this reframe is the mental health of the parents in
Yeah.
being often stressed out, being a parent. Oh, and by the way, being a parent during a pandemic.
And a lot of that stress is self-created, meaning when I meet mothers in my office, and of course I know we meet fathers too, but I mainly meet mothers. It's just the way society is right now.
Yep.
And I look at mothers through my experience of being a pediatrician for the last 7, 10 years, if you include residency. And I see mothers who have like 5 children who seem to have it all figured out. And then I see moms who have 5 children who are struggling. And it's, a lot of it has to do with everyone's individual resources and everyone's individual ability to reframe when they're going through hard times. And so I started asking a lot of my moms who seem to feel happy and joy in a lot of their mothering experience. And I'm like, what makes you feel so happy and confident right now? I'm trying to learn about maternal mental health. And the number one thing that they say is like, I just own my decisions. I'm happy with the decisions I make. I know that it may not always seem right for what other people are doing, but I know that I am making the best decisions for my family with the information I have, right? We all have different access to resources, and we all have different information at that current moment. And the resources component is huge. So when in the pandemic, when we had to decide to send our son back to childcare, there are a lot of people who are like, oh no, I wouldn't send my kid back during an Omicron surge. My husband and I, we work in healthcare. We had no alternative. And so we looked at weighing benefit and risk and also the information and resources we have. Resources mean we have no alternate childcare. Information being, hey, this variant is not as severe as the Delta variant, as other variants. I understand there's a lot of unknown. I understand that. But unfortunately, in our lives, we are not able to control every outcome in our health, and we're not able to control every outcome with our child's development. Your child could fall off a tree and break their arm. Same concept, that you didn't do anything wrong as a parent. That was an accident. Things happen. But it's about saying, hey, I did what I could. My child was having fun on that tree. I am protecting my kid as much as I can during this pandemic, but I can only control what I'm feasibly able to control. And it's when you start to learn to let go of that you really start to feel peace in your life, that, hey, I'm only human. I can't be in control of every aspect of my child's life because I can't even be in control of every aspect of my life. So if I'm already trying to do that for myself and then also my child, you are going to feel so drained in your life because you're constantly making decisions to avoid risks, to avoid this, to avoid that. When in reality, you have to pick and choose your battles and say, you know what? I need to focus on this right now. Right now, I know that kids have good outcomes. Or right now, I know that I don't have the capability to do X, Y, and Z. So what do I do at this moment? And it's when a mother can get to that balance that I think they find true peace. They feel, you know what? I understand I'm going to go through hard times. My life isn't perfect. And I think people think that when you see resilience in a human being, that it means that their life is easy. I can tell you firsthand, I've gone through a lot of trauma, but it's the ability to kind of understand that those trauma episodes that have happened in my life, they are not going to define me. I'm going to use the trauma to make something brighter and bigger. And that is how I reframe trauma, and it's really hard to get there, but it's something I think a lot of mothers, when they finally get there, they're going to feel like, yeah, I feel so empowered. I am the best mother for my kid. I'm going to do what I need to do with the information and resources I have and not compare to anybody else.
It is so interesting. You brought up 2 words, 2 of my most popular downloads that I would encourage people to go back and listen to in the podcast, one on trauma and another on resilience. And I don't know if those are just key words people use right now, but they are resonating in getting through that and moving on, resilience being the key to that. And I think, at least for myself, having 3 kids at different levels, one in college and high school and middle school, that the ability to bounce back, because we will, as parents, have issues. We will have hardships. We will have stress. I can remember with my that first turning point of what you said of like, I have to realize I can't do it all. And I was definitely a stressed out first mom, and kind of that controlling, needing to have everything done and they sleep right. And I'm going to get on a schedule and I'm going to do all this perfect. And I can actually remember driving, not being late for a doctor's appointment. Sorry to the doctor who has people miss appointments, thinking I can't make it today. And that's okay. I can't do it. And kind of this light bulb moment of like, it's okay to say I can't.
Yes.
And then turn around and go home and just reframe. And I think that's a really hard thing for moms, especially moms, maybe some dads, to realize like, it's okay to just do the best you can. And that's okay.
And I think it's been programmed through us,
I do
especially as
too.
females. When we
Mhm.
grow up, we are told that we can do all of these things. Again, like the hardworking ethic, that everything will turn out if you just work hard. And then how we talk about moms, right? Like super moms, like that term, like, oh, mom, you do it all. They do
Totally.
it all because
Yeah.
they have to do it all. We don't
Hmm.
want to always do everything on our own. Like
Hmm.
everyone I think is burnt out to some degree as a mother, because we do take on the brunt of the mental load and a brunt of all the, if you're a working mom, all of that work at the work stuff that you have to put in, and then you have to take care of your kid, and then they're sick, and you, like you said, sleep, behavior, tantrums, all of that adds to our mental space. And like you said perfectly, sometimes it's just saying I can't physically do something, and sometimes it's just saying I can't mentally do this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I cannot mentally, I do not have the capability in me to handle this. And I have had moments with my husband where my son is throwing a tantrum, and I turn to him and I say, how are you feeling right now? To my husband, he's like, I'm good. I'm like, I mentally cannot handle this tantrum at this moment. I'm very overwhelmed and I'm afraid that I'm going to yell and get upset. I need you to handle this tantrum. I will be right back. And that doesn't always happen I'm sometimes alone with my son during tantrums. But if you have help or support and have that, someone to lean on saying, hey, I need you to take over right
Yeah.
now because mentally I don't have the space. And I know I'm not always going to be like that, but I need you to hear me and listen to what I'm saying, is that I need this moment for my mental health because I know what this is triggering in me. And I think that insight is so important for moms. It's what I'm trying to do with my platform in terms of just really making people understand what is triggering you. What
Yeah.
is it that makes you feel upset? What is it that makes you so insecure? Because we all deal with that, but it's when you can have ownership over those things that you start to see things clearer and you feel more confident in the decisions you
It's
make because you
so
have insight.
true.
Mhm.
Ownership, and just I've learned being able to label it, just
Yeah.
actually being able to say, I'm having a tough time today. This is A, anxiety,
Yes.
B, too many things on my plate. Like just being able to identify it, say it out loud, sometimes write it down, helps to get to the next stage.
And it's what we do in therapy, right? So if you ever went to therapy, I actually go see a life coach, which I actually find even better than a therapist. I love therapy, don't get me wrong, some people really need it, but I love it in that I get that person who really understands and allows me to just feel and say
Yeah.
what I want to say. That permission. I think so many mothers are just looking for permission to feel or
Yeah.
permission to be vulnerable. And I
Hmm.
think my motto is that vulnerability leads to breakthroughs. So the
Mm.
more vulnerable you can be in your life, I believe that the more breakthroughs you're going to see. If you put on this hard exterior your entire life, that's not the human experience. The human experience is understanding that there is going to be highs and lows. That's what life is. You're going to go through seasons where you're thriving and seasons where you're
Mm.
just barely hanging on. And it's understanding that, okay, I am in a season where I'm not surviving right now. I am barely hanging on, but I recognize that. And how now, because I recognize it and I have the outlet to either dance it out with music or talk to a friend or tell my partner or tell a loved one, if you don't have a partner, I need help, is when you can say, okay, now I move forward and I can begin to process this at my own time. But if you just hold on to that and never release it, whether it's through crying, talking to someone, a therapist, a professional, a loved one, you are just going to continue to hold on to that angst and that anger and that resentment. And it's just never going to process
Yeah.
into a healthier emotion. And I think it's so beautiful when someone goes through trauma. Like, I'm not saying I ever want someone to go through trauma, but what I always feel, and I might cry, is that, I went with my son, he had a very traumatic delivery. And I read stories about like celebrities having traumatic deliveries or going through something super traumatic. And in my head, I'm not happy that that person went through trauma, but I tell myself, wow, when that person comes through the other side,
Mm.
imagine how powerful that person is going to be. Because when you can process hard times, and trauma is defined as how you want to define it, right? If you're going through grief or trauma, when you're able to process it and come through the other side, that is when you really see a new person being born, and that's you.
Yeah.
You see
Yeah.
this new life of that you've created, that you're like, I went through something really hard, and look at what I'm doing with it
Yeah.
now. And that's such a beautiful place that I don't think a lot of people get to go through because they don't either have the insight or have the permission to feel.
Yeah. And with kids and in life, the resiliency and trauma, but especially with kids, I always have to remind myself, whatever it is right now, it will be better tomorrow. It
Yes.
might still be a tantrum. It might still be an illness, might something, but it will always, and I tell my teenagers this because I know teenagers live in that moment and we worry about them and their mental health. Whatever it is today, it will always be better tomorrow. That's
Yes.
it's a hard thing. I want to ask you about some of the things that you've created. I love what you're doing. I love your
Thank
website,
you.
your
Thank you.
platform. I know you have a course for new moms. Is
Hmm.
that right? Tell
Yeah.
me about that because being a new mom is the most wonderful and the most stressful thing. So how are you helping people with that? What kind of tips are you giving?
Yeah, so Peds Doc Talk as a brand is trying to help all parents with parenting, health, and illness in an easy to understand way that doesn't cause fear. Because I feel like when you
Mm,
Google, you end up finding out that your child is going to need to be in the hospital or have
mm,
this horrible illness. So I'm trying to create, as a whole bigger platform, a website that is a searchable engine for the way I want parents to be educated, not Google, right? I want you to come to my website and search fever and be able to understand about things about fever that I think will really resonate and say, hey, I don't need to be panicking about every fever. So when I decided to create the New Mom Survival Guide, I chose to talk only to moms because I'm a mom myself and I saw so many mothers go through very similar experiences. It's not to say that fathers or other caregivers don't, but there is something unique about the woman experience raising a child. And I think
mm.
it has to do with how we were raised as women, the social media comparison game that we tend to carry way more than men, a lot of different things that I think. So I wanted a resource for moms to have for their first year of a child's life that not only speaks to how to breastfeed your child, formula feed, sleep, solid introduction, development milestones, teething, all of the stuff that happens in baby's first year, but it also reminds mothers to have the insight for themselves. So I talk about this breaking the cycles of parenting. I have journaling exercises where I say, I need you to write these answers down. Why are you afraid of this? What is your expectation as a mom? Why do you hold these expectations? Is it something that was created from you from your father or your mother? Because unless we can understand where we came from as children and as adults now, you're not going to make the breakthroughs with your children if you have not broken down your traumas, right? Like
Yeah.
if you have been raised in a household that never allowed tears, which I was one of those children. If you cry, you're weak. That's what
Mm.
Indian culture believes, right? So I grew up always feeling that me crying was a negative. And it took me the last 3 years of being happy when I cried and looking at it as powerful,
Mm.
as emotional discharge. And I talk about it as I am love when I cry now. I don't feel ashamed, right? I used to feel ashamed because I grew up with that. So now when my son cries, I can tell him, you have nothing to be ashamed about. You are allowed to cry. I am here for you if you need me. And that only could happen until I broke down
Mm.
that trauma that I had from my childhood. And we call it trauma because it was traumatic of not being able to feel my feelings.
Yeah.
So that is what I'm trying to guide parents on, that I can only educate you all on sleep, on feeding, on milestones, all of that, only if I can remove the insecurities and anxieties that you have that have been created for you when you have now become a mother. And so it's that cycle of parenting that I'm really trying to help break in order to educate parents.
I love it. As a health reporter for many years in the news, I feel your Google pain because people
Yes.
will, they will. And naturally, that's the first place we go. So having a
Yeah.
safe place that we know we can search and find and know that it's not just somebody's blog who said something that is going to give bad advice is really, really valuable. So where can people get more information, find you, find your course, find your website, everything?
I think this year I reorganized everything so it's easier to find, but my website, pedsdoctalk.com, would be the best place to start. And my Instagram account, pedsdoctalk on Instagram, PEDSDOCTALK. From there, you'll be able to get access to my podcast, my YouTube, as well as my course, which is what I'm talking about. And then it's all on the website as well. And again, the website is going to hopefully be the hub of everything in this year, where there'll be searchable ways to find content, whether it was from Instagram or YouTube or podcasting. So you're not having to DM me or look like, hey, Dr. Mona, do you have something about pumping or something about tummy time? Like, I want to move all of my content into that one place to make parents feel more empowered and just love parenting again. Like, I think sometimes we get so burnt out and tapped out because no one is saying, hey, it's okay to be tapped out, but also let me tell you what you really need to be concerned about right now. Let me
Yeah.
tell you X, Y, and Z. Here is when you need to go see a clinician. Here is when I am worried. And look at the big picture of your kid all the while. because if you can look at the big picture and your big picture goals is when you can really start to reframe and say, I'm in the moment. This is just a moment. Like you said, it's going to get better. Tomorrow is going to be a better day. I've survived 100% of my most shittiest days, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's enjoy parenting, because it really is
Yes,
wonderful to
it
not
really
always stress
is.
about it. Yeah.
And I love kids, and I think you can't be a pediatrician doing what I'm doing on social media if you don't love children for who they are and what they're going to give to this world. Like, I look at every child as an opportunity, right? An opportunity to raise a kid who's kind, compassionate, but also understands their self-worth and loves themselves for who they are. I mean, it sounds impossible, but my goal is to teach parents that. I mean, I hope that parents understand through being with me that, hey, you need to set some rules. There's going to be boundaries, but we are going to teach our children that you are so powerful and your voice is powerful, how to respect other human beings and the environment. All of this is so important, but just truly the bottom line, love yourself. Like, I feel like so many of us have forgotten how to love ourselves. And it doesn't mean you're being cocky. It just means I love the person I am right now, but I also understand that I'm going to go through a lot of changes and I have so much to learn. And that's what I want my son to learn too, that you are powerful, but you are not perfect, because we all are constantly learning from this world. And you are going to become better and better when you start to learn through those experiences.
You bet. To grow and learn no matter how old you are. Such a beautiful message. I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for taking the time. Everything you mentioned, I'm going to put in the show notes. So if somebody couldn't write it down fast enough, and find it in the show notes. Thanks again. Let's talk again soon. Okay.
I would love to talk
I will
to you
have
again.
topics for you.
I'm always willing. It's such a pleasure doing this. And again, thank you for what you're doing with your platform and your podcast as